Hello viewers, tonight I am at Claymore Chapter 20. For those of you who are, how should I say, subscribers to this channel who are not used to this content, I do read manga here as well as do those other types of videos about culture, religion, and associated subjects. I'm giving this warning to you, or peradventure any children who may be watching this video. Claymore can be quite a violent manga, so that is why I give warnings every time I make a video about Claymore now, just so that you know that these Claymore videos can be quite bloody in regard to artwork, and what happens in them can be a good deal disturbing, especially in the later chapters. Really, I will say quite literally, in the later chapters, for sure, this is one of those mind-scarring things. Maybe not as bad as Berserk, but quite bad. Anyhow, I am, as usual, going to do narration and commentary. As I've said many times, this is not professional voice quality work in regard to, how should I say, voice acting quality work. This is just a hobbyist, sort of, how should I say, an amateur critic of media, simply giving narration, their own commentary, and therefore their own opinions. So, anyhow, I do believe I should begin. What the? Are the Claymores fighting each other? The fool. Oh my. The plan was for her to sneak up from behind, but she isn't trying to hide. She's up against Teresa of the faint smile. Does she think she can win by attacking head-on? Alright, apparently this new Claymore Priscilla is deciding to quite literally just fight her right now. Very interesting. Alright. Claire, step away. But, don't worry, I'll be fine. Believe what I tell you. Like I said before. Alright, the little girl runs away. Claire runs away. Okay, we have some sound effects. Zot. I should not even try to do these sound effects, because I do not know what it is. They never make sense. And they will just endlessly annoy me, because then again, I wonder if I could actually make any more, how should I say, accurate sound effects. So peradventure, I should not be so critical of the people who make the sound effects, of whoever writes this or translates this. Comic books have always been strange in how they sort of wrote out their sound effects, I mean to say. Okay. Let me see. Now I have to get ready again. Priscilla, was it? Answer me something. You could have attacked when I landed. Why didn't you? You could have wounded me. But that would have been cowardly, don't you think? Huh? There's something I wanted to ask you. Why didn't you surrender yourself before? You broke the organization's rules. Alright, now this is the interesting thing that, in sooth, did not very much make much sense. Priscilla is sort of this person who, for whatever reason, does not have very much of a personality. When we read about her, when we read what she says, and in regard to the anime annoyed me. I just decided I was going to read the whole manga myself, so I really do not know how that voice acting was in the anime, and if they conveyed Priscilla's character better. But Priscilla, when I first saw her and when she first sort of appeared, just like many of these other characters, the character development did not seem that wonderful, did not seem that in depth. I will put it that way. But I mean, for whatever reason, she was very intent on basically saying, why did you not follow the rules? That fascinated me for whatever reason. And that is sort of a shallow character. Alright? This was something that sort of recurred in her, in sort of her development. And it was really, you know, the whole Claymore idea, I think it could have been a good deal better. I think that the characters could have been far more unique. And even the name, the organization. The theme of the series is more medieval, Middle Ages type of theme, so to speak. Alright? An old theme with swords and fighting, and yet you have this weird technological almost organization that sort of does biotechnological research, that sort of biomechanical research and biosciences, to a point where it is almost like Frankenstein in a sense. And the question I would have is that, well, at this point you could develop guns, bombs, alright, with all this technology you have in regard to biotechnical research, you would think, well, you're capable of cutting a woman open, putting strange body parts in her and essentially making her stronger. Imagine if you could create gunpowder or any of these things. You could literally destroy a whole town with that, and obviously you could destroy Yoma. The whole idea about Yoma just being the strongest entity ever did not make very much sense to me. And I have to say that with all of the technology that the organization has, you would think, well, would they not develop society more? Or why are they hoarding all of that technology to themselves? There are very few answers, and we never, in my opinion, we will never receive those answers. And this is because the story itself, and the characters themselves are rather shallow. And this whole sort of emphasis upon rules, it does not seem so very wild and homegrown like you would expect a sort of story about swords and fighting. Of course, we don't have sorcery, so it is not a swords and sorcery story, but at the same time you wonder, everyone who's a Claymore, it looks like you work for an organization, and the organizations, in a sense, in a sort of modern sense, everyone dresses in the same uniform, and everything is sort of clean and polished. And the fact that Claymores sort of have that aspect to them, where you look at them and you say, alright, this is a Claymore, I know what they look like. For knights in the old days, you expect some variety amongst them. Not everything is so clean and polished and factory made. Not everyone has the same sword. Maybe you find one person with a battle hammer or a great sword or claymore, or if you go to samurai, you have naganatas, you have katanas. History testifies to a sort of variation in armor and weaponry, and even different types of warriors who have different codes and creeds. But for the organization, it is almost as though Priscilla, as a character, is part of this organization, is, in my opinion, not very interesting, and none of the Claymores really are, in my opinion. I mean, there were some peculiarities regarding their characters. However, there was something about that emphasis about making the Claymore so uniform, so sanitized, so gray, so white, so steel-like. And along with their blonde hair, their pale skin and so forth, they look almost a little too lifeless. Let me put it that way. Everyone basically looked the same. And Priscilla, for whatever reason, is really focused on rules. I think Priscilla as a character, especially early on, could have been far more interesting, but anyhow, let us continue. Alright. Our job is to kill Yoma, to protect human life. We risk our lives fighting for humans. For us to kill one of them would be to destroy the very trust that we've tried so hard to create. Alright, sword-wielding sounds. Forgive me, but by the organization's rules, I must take your head. I guess that sound is her sort of... I have no idea, to be honest. I'm not going to try to guess what... I mean, maybe her sort of shuffling sounds as she shuffles her feet and getteth in position. Who can say? Everyone is looking with bated breath. You've done a fine job of justifying their logic. It may make sense, but if you don't mind my saying, the real world doesn't work that way, young lady. Alright, she flies at her. And what can I say about this dialogue? The dialogue is... how should I say it? I mean, can we expound? But you see, in a combat-heavy manga, especially one where the themes are not really carrying it, and the atmosphere is sort of disjointed, or rather, it is contrasted. You have a contrasted background of these sort of corporate individuals who look so uniform behind the Middle Ages background, and it seemeth as though the background of the Middle Ages is just there. And these claymores are just sort of alien-like. And they did not seem so very, how should I say, part of the environment to me. But this, I mean, can you expound upon how the real world doesn't work that way? Because you see in combat manga, in at least some badly written ones, conversations always cut off and everything is just, the fighting sort of takes precedence, and things are really not well explained. And obviously, if you have been basically looking at this series with me, excuse me, you probably have noticed that I've talked about some inconsistencies in the narrative. I wonder, I might as well just fill this whole screen up, to be honest. 250%, I suppose. Wait. 240, 200. Actually, no. No, I will keep the zoom at 200%. I am very sorry for that delay. But anyhow, interesting. But maybe it will get better as we read. Clang! That is the only sound effect that makes sense to me, honestly. Why you? No. I should not have even tried that. I am terrible at these. Some other sound effects. Gashin. I suppose that makes sense. Anyhow, fwoosh, fwish, clang. Alright, that makes sense. Swish. Alright, these sound effects make sense to me. Swish, 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 clang. Alright, the girl, Claire, she is surprised. My. Oh. Alright. Boom. Crash. How is she keeping up with an experienced Claymore veteran? Obviously, latent potential. Latent potential. If you did not hear how I talked about this in chapter 18, the whole latent potential thing is something that you see often in manga and anime. Far more than you do in Western cartoons and comic books. You have an individual, they are given sort of an unwarranted power boost, or sort of they're able to fight experienced fighters or whoever with just the utmost capability, and you wonder, why are they so powerful? Latent potential or whatever. Or, they're just... Alright, anyhow, they really, do not explain how someone who is apparently experienced as Teresa is just so overwhelmed. But maybe there was something that I did not remember. Alright. Bam. Grr. Whoosh. Alright. I am going to take a breath. Alright, that was more than one breath, but if I do that, it prevents me from running out of breath. Yes, anyhow, one moment. I have to clear my throat. Alright. Even though it is almost April, it is still somewhat cold here where I live. Anyhow. Oh, it looks like she is getting in her face. Oh goodness. That really surprised her. Oh goodness, we have exclamation point here. Clang, clang, clang. Alright, it seems as though Teresa is giving, or rather, Priscilla is actually giving Teresa a challenge, whereas the other Claymores were someone had a difficult time of it. Teresa! Not bad. She's holding her own against Teresa. And of course we have, I think her name, I'm not going to tell people her name, alright? Do you know why she's called Teresa of the Faint Smile? Huh? Isn't she always smiling when she kills Yoma? That's no different from you or Sophia, but only Teresa is called that. True. So why is that? Unlike Sophia's strength, my speed, and your agility, Teresa's only asset is her smile. But she excels in all of those things. Oh, I swear, I happen to try to speak differently I forgot, I get mixed up with who's speaking. But she excels in all of those things, so anyhow, I try to do different voices, but to be honest, you cannot expect true mastery from me because basically I'm doing this on the fly. And my voices are never really that good, I just use whatever vocal range I have. That isn't exactly true. Each of our talents is better than hers. Huh? What makes Teresa the best is her unparalleled ability to sense Yoma aura. Clang, clashing. Alright. Her ability to sense Yoma aura. Anyone who's certified Teresa can do more than sense a Yoma's location. She can sense the strength and speed of the Yoma energy flowing through the body. Those who fight using Yoma power send it to the parts of the body they want to move. The person isn't aware of this. Do you realize what that means? Teresa can sense our actions before we move. The more we use our Yoma power. That's why Teresa of the Faint Smile will find it hardest to beat Priscilla, who fights with her Yoma power fully suppressed. And the abilities were so, let me tell you something about Claymore abilities. They were so boring. Now, if those of you who are watching my chapters, or rather my narration and commentary about chapters, I happen to say that the man with the D&D sword was really cool. Anyhow, there was a man with a magic sword that was basically like a Soul Calibur Ivy Valentine whip. And I said, wow, this is so wonderful. This is so cool. This is something actually cool. An ability, a type of magic or a type of interesting artifact or item or sword, the Falcon Sword. It even had a cool name. Do we see it again? Hey, you guess. I am not going to tell you, but I think you probably know. Alright, I think you can probably guess if we're going to see the Falcon Sword again, like a really cool Falcon Sword, or if any of these Claymores are going to really do anything like what that guy did. Anything remotely is cool. All of their abilities are really obscure. It is almost, I can sense Yoma power. I can sense where your Yoma power is. I can do this. I can do that. I have Quick Sword and all of this. It all looks the same. And that is the problem. In regard to what they do, and we're going to see some different stuff later, but it is going to be really nasty stuff. There's nothing really flashy about what any of these people do. And their abilities, oh, sure, that sounds really cool, I suppose. But does it look cool? Not really. It's more of an internal thing. I mean, they sense your power. They know how you're going to move and all of this stuff. And she has a special ability too. It is really going to be a challenge for her. And I just think, wow, really? I mean, to me, at least when I talk about Dragon Ball Z, or let me say something like Inuyasha, they have powerful wind abilities like Wind Scar, and Inuyasha has some amazing type of abilities that look really cool and really flashy and interesting. Alright, Superman has his little laser eyes. Alright, to be honest, Claymore has girls with swords. This girl is really fast with her sword. That girl, she can sort of detect what you're going to do. Are there any powerful psionics like a Mind Flayer from D&D, or what we'd see from a Dark Sun campaign? No, but I mean, she's really good with her sword. She can really cut you up, and she can do some other things. She can become a Yoma, potentially. What else? They all dress the same. They all carry the same swords. They have Yoki. And I think, okay, is that really fun, flashy, interesting? How much flair does it have? Not much. But we can explain it really well. I mean, she can detect your abilities. She knows what moves you make before you make them. And I just think, alright, this is the quality of... Never mind, because we're going to see different things as we go along. But I will be honest, none of it really was that flashy to me. I like flashy things. I like things that sort of characters do that look cool. And I suppose flashy, so to speak. Extravagant. Magnanimous. And everything in Claymore is really is sort of bare bones. How should I say? Banal, in my opinion. Anyhow, Teresa. Boom. Alright. More fighting here. Clang, bang, clang, clang. Alright. Clang, shang. Ping, 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 ping. Bam, clang. Ping, 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 ping. Ow. Ah. Alright. The people are going crazy. Apparently these swords are making some terrible noises. Damn. This is absurd. Wow, incredible. The sound of the swords could shatter glass. Oh my goodness. I mean, and what was the Berserk meme? Clang. Because, I mean, of course Berserk was, I suppose, somewhat more interesting than this, or maybe a good deal, but there was that idea when the new Berserker released, everyone was saying clang because the swords would just make that sound, and there was just something about the new Berserk 3D anime that was really unnerving about. I mean, apparently the animation wasn't good and people just sort of start saying clang. I feel that way about this in a different sense. The Claymore battles are really boring. The battles themselves get really banal. I will not say how. I will not say how. We will see that the battles are not that exciting because mainly it's just physical altercations, physical fighting. No one's bringing out anything else. No one's taking out, peradventure, a crossbow, a spear, anything else except these big great swords. It's clashing, clang, 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 and some other stuff happens. You know, Yoma and blood and so forth. Alright? Anyhow, the girl's pretty good. She's a worthy opponent. Huh? Hey. Ping ping. Bam. Clang. Ka-clang. More clang clang. Ping ping. Clang ping. Clang clang. It's probably time. It's time we help Priscilla. The way things are going, it's her head that's going to fall. Huh? But you just said, right now the odds are in Teresa's favor. Alright. A sound effect which seems not very apt, but sure. Okay, more clanging. I cannot do any more clangs. More clanging sounds. Huh? Priscilla's fighting blindly, which means Teresa doesn't need her special abilities to fight. Priscilla's been outmatched all along. What's going on? I suddenly slowed down. Wait, she's the one who sped up. One moment. I have to clear my throat again. I always have some gameplay in the background. Alright. Right, let me begin. Or continue, rather. How? Why? I fought dozens of Yoma. I've always protected humans. She's the bad guy. She murdered humans. So why can't I win? Alright. It ended sort of abruptly, which makes me want to talk a little bit more. But in sooth, the Claymore abilities are quite boring. I have read the oh my, I still have the sound on here. Sorry, viewers. Anyhow, the Claymore abilities are so boring when I compare them to things like Dragon Ball Z, Inuyasha, even Rurouni Kenshin. Alright? Far more interesting in my opinion. Far more visually appealing too. The characters look more interesting in that not everyone is wearing the same armor sets, and that's sort of a story about feudal Japan. You would think that Claymore, which has such a setting, you would be able to, I do not know. It's the uniforms, it's the fact the abilities are so boring, it's the fact that everything usually devolves into clang clang clang, or big Yoma, nasty looking thing. It's basically has tentacles or claws that sort of extend, and none of it makes sense because they cannot explain it. But yes, Claymore the aesthetics. The aesthetic could be far more vibrant, far more colorful. All right? But it isn't. So, in my opinion, Claymore has a lot of wasted potential in regard to their whole atmosphere and how they just implemented the fights that they implemented. To me, I've always thought that Claymore storytelling and the battles, because in many of the issues that we're going to read, the battles are going to sort of take center stage. And that sort of made me speed read through the whole manga, because at some point I said these battles are just so not much different is happening. It's just, to me, there's just nothing colorful, flair. There's not much flair to it. They have one way to kill, and basically, I mean, everything is really sort of highly visceral, but it is really not very climactic. Berserk had some very special things about it that sort of made it more interesting. There was sort of a mystique about Berserk, and the characters sort of had more uniqueness, and they had their own peculiarities in regard to design, and their own capabilities in combat were more vividly expressed, I think. But at the same time, I really have to say, of course, Berserk, I have my own problems with Berserk. I really despise a lot of what I usually see in regard to the horror perspective, because a lot of it's not that scary to me. But I have to say, a lot of these chapters are going to be combat heavy. I have no problem with combat heavy chapters, but I like them to be more exciting. You have those things in combat manga, in combat heavy manga, so to speak, where you have fighting and someone would just say, I'm going to explain their abilities to you, because you cannot really see them. I like to see abilities in action. I don't like to see someone have to explain to me some obscure ability. No, let me see fire or something come from your sword, or let me see something magical. Let me see something with some flair. Let me see you do something that I can see, and I can make a sort of guess or an estimation as to what the character did. I like that. I think that is more interesting, because that respects our own intelligence, and sort of indicates that the author thinks that you are intelligent enough to understand how this battle is going to play out and what this character can do. Instead, what do we have in many manga? We have a character who sort of stands there or sits there with a stoic face and says, oh, let me explain how they are going to win this fight. Let me tell you their abilities. Let me tell you about their abilities. No, I want to see how their abilities function. I want to see how they sort of engage in combat. Just like we like to play Dark Souls and Elden Ring as games that sort of do not tell us what our enemies are going to do and really do not explain in a lot of focus what our enemies are going to do and how they are going to deal with us as an opponent. I think that many of us who read manga, I myself am like this in regard to stories, roleplay, or anything else of that sort. I like to witness it. Do not tell me this is how what she does works. Please let me see myself. I will be intelligent enough to understand what she did, or keep it a mystery, which is why I think FromSoft games especially, which I know this is manga, but the same principle applies in storytelling. If you make something mysterious and you make it so that we as viewers, as consumers of the media, have to sort of guess and understand this through intuition, I think that is far more interesting. And it's just like if you read a Pulp Fiction magazine. There's a lot of mystery in it, and I think the problem with comic books in comparison to Pulp Fiction, like H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and people who used to write stories like that, Clark Ashton Smith, the whole Lovecraft circle, those people would write short stories that they had a highly incredible degree of writing, skill to the point where manga and comic books do not compare. However, personally, I think if I'm reading media, I want the media to be somewhat, how should I say, exciting, riveting. So I judge all writing by a very high standard. For manga artists and for comic book artists and authors, they are essentially doing two jobs at once. You're writing the comic book or the manga, and you are engaging in the art, unless you have people doing, how should I say, separate jobs. And what you can write on the page is really limited. So I suppose writing skill is not really expected, but at the same time, I do critiques upon it because, frankly, I think that not many people do just sort of talk about if something makes sense or how something could be improved, because I think really in regard to abilities, they could be visually portrayed to the extent where there could have been abilities in Claymore where they could have just shown us. And we could have looked at it and said, okay, I see what is going on. And it would make us pay more attention to the battles. It would make us reread the battles to sort of think, all right, let me reread this and look at this art again and see exactly what she did. But when you make an ability so obscure, like as though, wait, she can sense the energy in her, it sounds really cool. However, from a perspective of really portraying that in art, you cannot see it. And the problem with something you cannot see is that we cannot really fully understand the significance of this. When it is sort of exhibited in an art form and you sort of display it artfully, and we are reading and looking at the, how should I say, the event, and it really seems as though we can see it happening and playing out, abilities like that work far better in regard to this medium. In regard to any medium, I would say for the most part. But in regard to writing, I think you can sort of go into more detail and explain more. But I really despise, or rather, I really do not favor when you have to have a character explain to you how a fighting ability works. I have to explain to you how this person fights. No, in my opinion, that would be better explained during the fight. In other words, during the fight, maybe you can have the foe sort of realize something. You do not. I feel as though I'm being treated as someone who is stupid when you have the author basically take the time to explain this to me. And I'm just thinking, wait, okay, I suppose you have to tell me, or that's what the situation calls for, but it detracts from the fight in order to go to another character. And I sort of like the fight to progress naturally, not sort of be a fight where you have the fight and then you have, okay, go to this character so they can explain more. You have a fight, then let's go from the fight, go to this character, they can explain more. And they keep interrupting the fight so that this person can talk. Let me explain exactly how this fight is going and exactly what is happening in this fight. That annoys me. It makes the whole experience of reading this manga more boring. In my opinion. But anyhow, that was somewhat interesting. So I will continue to read through the Claymore manga. I am happy that people are still watching this series, forsooth. That is somewhat surprising. And that is very satisfying to know that at least some people look at it. Anyhow, may you be blessed and farewell.